All right, and welcome to the first podcast of Prometheus Season 3. This is the pre-assessment podcast where we will talk about the cast for Season 3. Today, my co-host is Season 2 alumni and fan favorite, Bloody. Bloody, how are you today?
Woo! I'm good. We've got Humphrey in the background,
Yeah.
so we're ready to go.
Love it, as he's cleaning himself in the
Yeah,
background.
give him some privacy.
All right, so we have five people to talk about today. I say
Yeah.
we just hop right into it. So,
Yeah.
little introduction. We have first off, we have Andy. He is 51 years old. He's an engineer for a commercial door and hardware company. He has only ever played one org before, so he's relatively new, and it was a mini that was done all in one day. So he's a very, very interesting guy. Seems to be very colorful, and I'm excited to see him play because I feel like there is definitely a young energy about him. I used air quotes, but I shouldn't have used air quotes. There is a young energy about him, despite him being 51. That was also 51's not even that old. But I'm really curious. What did you think about Andy?
I mean, exactly what you said. I find Andy's self-awareness, I think, the most interesting and important part about him. First off, I mean, from the fact that he even just only playing one org, as he talked about, like coming into that environment and recognizing, like, I'm the archetype of this older white male, and with that, there are perceptions or there are kind of like things that you can fall into where you start to lead the tribe, or you start to kind of like lead majority, or tell people how to get things done. I think the fact that he is aware of not only his perceptions as an older player, but also even aware of like things that he wanted to come in and do in that one org. Like he said, I thought I was going to come in and do whatever it took, but it turned out I was the loyal guy. I think he's already learning and applying so much of just that alone. Oh my God. Get out of here. I think aside from his gameplay, which is honestly small, right? Like he's only had one org. I think he is just so eclectic. I mean, he said it himself. He's eclectic as far as a range and skill set. He's an RPG nerd. He loves fantasy, sci-fi, D&D, all that good stuff. But he's also a black belt in karate. He's also a freelance writer. He's an improv actor and a musical improv actor at that. I mean, he is just he runs the gamut of interest and passion. And I think that's probably the one word I would put for him is passionate. He just seems like a passionate person.
Yeah, and so like it'll be interesting to actually see him interact socially because assuming he's not like actually socially awkward, which I don't believe he is, having that kind of wide range of interests and passions can actually allow him to connect with a number of people on a number of different levels, younger or older. And we have a wide range of ages this season. Obviously, it always skews towards the younger side, but I'm really curious to see how that's going to factor in, and especially now that he has that one game under his belt. And like that's a huge thing is, kind of knowing how you are to have that sort of self-perception, which is also how I feel about another player, which we'll be talking about later.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm very excited. And we also do have a minor spoiler, but we have the Elder twist or the Elder mechanic because it's no longer a twist. It will be coming back, but it operates slightly differently. So let's kind of see how that might play into his game. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'll say.
Well, and fascinating enough, when you asked him what player he is most kind of interested in playing, like he picked out Tracy. And said that he wants to be that mother figure, but without mothering too hard, which he thought that Tracy did a really great job of. So I have so much high hopes for this guy. And one final kind of like thing that I really want to say before I forget, near the end of his interview, he had this thought that he kind of set out. I have it in quotes because I really wanted to read it out. I don't think it resonated as much with you as it does with me, but it was, rules aren't constraints. They just happen to be the box in which I can be creative, which to me is such a kind of Dungeons and Dragons kind of role-playing game kind of perspective to take to a game like this. So I think that when we look at his org experience, of course, very limited. But I think that, I mean, he even said like he's used to playing the role of different characters. I think his perceptions or how he kind of comes at rules is going to be very fascinating. I kind of see it almost like how Guyan in the last season, how we kind of approached the handbook, for instance, and got ahead of ourselves and made assumptions and creatively applied those in order to best position ourselves for competitions. So I could see him very much so kind of thinking a bit outside of the box in a way that I think will help his game.
Should be very interesting then.
Yeah.
I will also say too with Andy, you said, even he compared himself to Tracy. That's the thing. He did watch season 2. And I think that definitely, like, not to say that our game is the most groundbreaking game, because, it isn't. But I do think it actually, I genuinely think it helps watching how, like, the little mechanics go and kind of familiar yourself with, like, how it'll operate in a Zoom setting. And when he found out about Prometheus, he binge watched season 1 and season 2, the first 10 episodes within, I think, about like 4 or 5 days. Like,
absolutely impressive.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And yet he was also saying that, like, in his first orc, he was like, I don't know, it was hard to keep up with the pace. I mean, it turns out that was like a 16-hour day, like, or something like crazy. Like, I do think that this guy has a bit of the kind of endurance and the longevity and obviously the passion to kind of see things through. I mean, he watched 2 seasons worth in a pretty short amount of time. So,
yeah. All right. So let's move on to Caleb. I thought I had his thing up. Okay, here we go. Caleb is 20 years old. He is a college student currently right now. If I remember correctly, and I know I had the notes up here somewhere, I believe he is currently in a very prestigious Louisiana school, which automatically right off the bat shows you that this man has some intelligence. In addition to that, he is a huge fan of these reality competitions. He's played a number of games, I believe, primarily through the Discord side, which you would have much more input or insight in regards to that. But, something very, very interesting that wasn't even like really gameplay related. He talked about like something very personal to him. I believe it made the interview, but like he talked about, representation with, someone who has Tourette's. And it's actually funny. We have another contestant who actually does have Tourette's in addition to Caleb this season. And so I won't say anything because we're not talking about that other person. But one of the things that, despite Caleb being a very energetic, very fast talking young person, I'm actually really curious to see if he will make the connection from one person to another of both who has Tourette's. And not to say that that is this like life defining thing, but it's always very interesting when you have these commonalities, and especially something that is a social game that, kind of takes the larger into like this microcosm. I'm curious if that will create a bond, especially when you need to create these bonds in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, and inspiring too, right? How he kind of closed the interview really kind of talking about the representation and about kind of wanting to come in and Tourette's is not in any way a weakness, but something that he finds a lot of strength and pride in, and something that he knows he can overcome any game with his Tourette's. I want to quickly come back to what you were saying. Yes, he is at the #1 HBCU for Black doctors, which he says is rigorous as F. I bet, especially when you're, what was he, like pre-med or like chemistry, like some like pretty intense degree.
Chemistry pre-med,
yeah. I know Caleb. I've not had the fortune of playing with Caleb, but I have spec'd Caleb. Caleb and I come from the same Sequester server. Sequester, for those who don't know, quickly, it's just an offshoot of a Big Brother format. It's highly social, highly twist heavy. A lot of Survivor fans think it's trash, but otherwise, But all to say, I think that, I mean, you can see it even in his interview and how he kind of expresses himself. He's an incredibly expressive, emotive, like fast talker, fast thinker. Even to the point where at one point you asked, like, would you rather a drama-filled kind of playing field or a peaceful one? And before you could even say peaceful, like all the way through, he goes, drama, drama. I love drama. Like, I think that he is clearly, I mean, his name on Discord is Lightning, like this guy, like all he is like quick, quick, quick. And I think it's going to be his strength. I also worry a bit about what that does in a video format, albeit like I believe this is his first video org that he'll be playing in.
I believe so, yeah.
Very much used to kind of text-based. He's done minis and speeds before. I think he even also had a speed server at one point. But I am very interested in seeing how he translates into that video format. I think his personality is just so wonderful and so kind of easygoing. But I could see him also maybe talking himself into tight corners, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's even though. So it's very interesting. I agree. That thing could be his exact strength, but could also really be his downfall. And in these types of games, sometimes the fast pace, the fast, aggressive type players, like he could potentially be. And aggressive does not necessarily always mean negative. Those types of people can tend to actually take control of the game very early. And because it happens so quick, everyone else just kind of gets swept up, especially in like day one. In day one, when you're in your team dynamics, I could potentially actually see him leading the charge in his team. But also, I feel like we learned something in season 2. And while I would not necessarily compare these players' personalities, we look at someone like Maddie, who Maddie definitely had a more fast, aggressive strategic approach to it, where I believe had you guys had lost a challenge early on, Maddie very well would have been the person to stay and continue to lead the pack. And so I figure that probably could happen with Caleb as well. But you know what? Like, I want everyone to do well. And I'm already guessing that of the 15, Caleb is actually going to be one of the biggest personalities of this season.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, he had a quote about it. Everything he says is kind of iconic, right? Like he said, I don't really start fights, but I will finish them. He also is very, he feels very physically capable. He said, you won't be taking me out because I'm a physical flop. I do think that, to your point, I could see his personality in the right environment, especially on day one. Serving him so well. I think that he does have such a commanding force, even though he is very quick. I think that the way that he speaks, even like looking at his org experience, I think he probably spent like an easy 10 minutes kind of like going like beat by beat of all of the different ways in which he kind of like dominated different games. I find him a very kind of positive force. And I think that positivity, that positive tone also will serve him well. I think that if he toned a bit more negative, I could see it kind of coming across a bit more game body or a bit more kind of like hyper logical. But I think because he is so kind of big and kind of like fun loving, I think it might cut it a bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. I do still worry, though, because like I know he's going to be a big personality. I do. And this isn't even like a thing of like you, but like I do feel like it's really hard for those big personalities to actually make it to the end. There's always a couple of them in each season. And unless you're like very, very, very well rounded or even subtle in hiding your threat level, then you could make it further. But I don't know. I'm still very curious. I definitely get the feeling he will make it to day 2. It's just a matter of how far into day 2 he makes it and if he wins it all.
And even he says it himself, either I get cut at the very beginning or I'm a huge threat that needs to be taken out. I've never been a GOAT. Like, I don't think that there is an opportunity for Caleb to be a wallflower. I don't think that Caleb has ever been a wallflower in his life. And even from a text-based org perspective, I remember like specking him, like even through text, you can kind of just, he oozes personality. I'm most excited for his confessionals. His confessionals are so fun. And like literally, like, I mean, probably is one best confessional in every org he's ever played. But from a video standpoint, I find him, I think that he's able to communicate his feelings. I hope he's able to your point, have that kind of well-rounded personality that's able to kind of adapt, if that makes sense.
I mean, with Caleb as well, what I will say is that like he sent us some of his confessionals in his production chat, and they're a lot of fun. They definitely are, but he talks like a mile a minute, like. So like I'm really hoping that maybe he can slow it down and really organize his thoughts and lay things out. Because otherwise, like, you know, you only have a set amount of time to record confessionals. Yeah. He could potentially be portrayed through, I guess, my own fault, but his as well, like as this just like all over the place, like 20-something-year-old, you know, like. So it's just it's interesting. I hope that doesn't happen as well.
It's so funny you say that too, because at one point because we're going through like 5 different interviews today. Mm-hmm. At one point in the night, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna put this on like 1.5 speed. So I put like the interviews for some of them at 1.5 speed. With Caleb, I never had that thought. I was like, if anything, I would want it to slow down just a bit. But yeah. We'll see.
All right. So moving on to the next person, we have Dani with one N. We'll call her Dani D just because of her initials, Dani D. She is 23 years old. She is a writer. She is pretty experienced when it comes to these games. She really only actually started playing them a couple years ago, and she never really stopped. She's been on production for a lot of them. She's played the hero. She's played the villain. She's played everything in between. And actually, both her first full game and my first full game in the org community, we played together. And in addition to that, we started out on the same team. And in addition to that, guess who else was on our team with us?
I'm guessing Louise because I watched the interview.
Louise, yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, for the audience, this is for the audience then. Yeah. So the three of us played together. And, you know, her and Louise had some other sort of relationship as the game went on. But she is really sweet. She's really endearing. Even back then when she was just getting started, she was really solid at the challenges, which actually really helped her when it came time when we had lost our second challenge, getting rid of someone. Like that was a huge plus. We were like, well, she's been like helping us, you know, carrying through the challenges. So we're going to keep her. She's very interesting. She's creative. She's witty. She had fantastic confessionals when we played, literally creating songs about, you know,
blows my mind.
It's so entertaining, and I hope even if we get a fraction of what she's delivered in the past, I think everyone will love her.
Yeah, Dani with a D, Dani with one N. She's fascinating to me in a spooky way, because like I think that to your point, she is so kind of like sweet and charismatic. But at the same time, like she bops between kind of like these like different kind of like to your point, she's loyal, but she's cutthroat. She's a villain in one game and wins, but she's also a hero in a Big Brother game and wins. Like she's able to play a mole in an org. Like she's social, but she's strategic, and like she's able to adapt to all these different situations in a way where I don't even know if it's because of the game or if it's because she just likes to play all these different types of ways. It's fascinating to me.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, a huge, you know, there's obviously, you can argue many different like important aspects of any of these games, but really a huge important part, which speaks to her character, is that she is highly adaptable. Adaptability is a huge part of these games. Hell, that's even why we give that award out at the end of our seasons, because it is a necessary trait. She adapts to the game because you need to adapt to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 different personalities, 20 plus personalities in some games. So adaptability is key. She has it.
Yeah, like to put in perspective, she opens the interview talking about how she is an incredibly loyal person. I think it was the second thing she said about herself. At first, with being obviously creativity. But she said that, like, I've stuck around the same people for a long time. Her closest friends are from her hometown. She's very family oriented. And you have a question at one point, which is like, are you going to be approaching this more honest, or are you willing to lie? And she starts by saying, well, yeah, I'm loyal. Once I find my person, I'll never let them go. But then she follows that up with, when I'm in a dire situation, if I need to throw my ally under the bus and run them over, yes, I would do that. Like, I'm like, she gives me like goosebumps. She's so scary. But like, I mean that because like she's saying all of this and she's like smiling and she's just like so even keeled in a way where I don't even know that she realizes how smart and like sharp she is. I'm sure she does, which that's even more scary. But like she's just like she's such an interesting player. And I mean, especially you having played with her, like it sounds like that's pretty emblematic of like even your guys' first org together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. And, I think part of it had to do with the fact that it was her first org at the time. I mean, just in general, she kind of comes off like more, soft and quieter.
Yeah.
But it's the thing is, once you start to get to talk to her, like, then, you're kind of hooked into talking to her. And now it's also been a couple years. So she's a little bit older. She's a little bit more experienced with just not only life, but with these games. And that also probably makes a huge difference. But yeah, I mean, obviously I got a slight bias towards her, which is also why I'm like talking a lot more for her versus some of these other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's fantastic. And I'm very excited to see, how her game goes. Although one thing is, I'm not really sure if she's actually played minis. At least I can't remember off the top of my head. Because I know most of the games are full length games.
I believe she said that she is more used to the long term, both playing and production. I'm very excited to see how she plays. I think one final thought on her. She talks about how people just naturally gravitate toward her, and even like when she talks about advantages in game, she talks about how she much rather use the advantage on someone else, which I thought was really fascinating. Like this idea of like, if I win something, I would much rather protect someone around me, keep them around for longer, build that trust. So I'm very interested. I think with a lot of these people that we'll be talking through today, that connection or connectivity it seems to be a through line, which is really cool.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to Dani with two N's, but Dani M for her last name. She's 28 years old. She's a commercial territory manager. I think they're like people that are in contact with a bunch of different companies and they're making deals and stuff like that, which could be a benefit in this game. She's never played one of these games before. She got introduced to this, this world because of me. Actually, we're friends. I would say we're friends. We were friends. We went to school together like years ago. And, you post about this kind of stuff and then, you reach out. But from when I remember Dani, when we were friends back in the day, she was really fun. Definitely a lot of people gravitated towards her. She was easily very social. She could fit herself into many different scenarios. Everyone always seemed to like her, was always up for a new adventure. I remember there was this one time when we were freshmen, there was supposedly a haunted floor in our college. And like, what did we do at 2:00 in the morning? We all went there and we all fucking watched horror movies on the haunted floor. Like she was just up for anything, exploring the city at 3 a.m. when you probably shouldn't be doing that in the middle of the night. She's always up for something new. And so I think she's going to take on this adventure with like a zest for life, so that's what I'm most excited for in Dani. But I do know at the same time, she's very unsure of like how something like this is going to operate, which could also potentially hurt her. So hopefully she plays up the social card and that'll be enough at least for her to gain her footing.
Yeah, it's interesting. In multiple times during her very, very short interview, she talks about not having problems talking to people or just loving kind of communicating with folks. I mean, I think just due to kind of the nature, it was like I think 8 minutes versus I think most were around 16 to like I think Caleb's went all the way to 28. But I like
Yeah.
but no knock on her. In that short interview, she comes across as so warm and so confident. And I think certainly she might have less on I might certainly have like less of a read on her versus maybe some of the other people that we're talking about. But that being said, I mean, even like that story that you tell of her and you guys going to the haunted floor, I think that she has this spirit, even in how she kind of communicates, where I can see her being kind of a steadfast kind of person. Like I don't think that she will necessarily like wade into the drama too much. In fact, um, yeah. You asked her about drama, would you want a more dramatic game or a more peaceful game? I thought her answer to that was so kind of almost beautiful. She talked about like, oh, well, I would want more drama because if there's no conflict, then no one's posing their opinions and there's no room to grow. I was like, there's something so pretty about that. I think she is definitely coming at this game more so from a human standpoint. And I think she has no choice but to, right? Because she doesn't have that org experience. But I think that will, at the very least, serve her well on day one as she gets to know people and starts to make those connections, especially with, I mean, just the other people that we've already talked about, Andy and other Dani and Caleb. I think all of these people are highly kind of like looking for making those connections and finding their people. I think Dani could very well be their people.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that would be really fun to see that. And with her, two of the five we're talking about, I'd probably say, no, not probably. I would say she is definitely the most inexperienced. And not only within like the org community, because she and our last person both haven't played orgs, but like the kind of reality competitions she watches are like Ink Master, Chopped, if those are, I'm not sure if those are actually reality competitions. But like, you know, so there's definitely going to be a thing of like she's going to have to learn this game on the fly, and the best way to go at it is on a human level, is just make your personal connections, because that's honestly what these games are at their core. They are social games.
Yeah, I think so long as she can make it past the first few rounds, I'm hoping that she gets enough time to kind of find her footing. I think very much of like Jeff from our season and how his kind of way into the org community or reality TV was kind of through the circle. Like when you start with kind of a different or kind of narrower view on what this is, I think maybe it can be a bit jarring. But I do have high hopes for her. I think that she just seems like a really cool person. I wonder though, do we actually think that she'll watch a season before she plays the game?
That I don't know. I'm going to say no. What
I don't
I
either.
would probably say is I could see her and a number of people really on this cast watching maybe like part of the first episode.
Definitely.
Or maybe the first episode or two. But you know what? Like we tell every single candidate, like really the best kind of homework you can do is to watch season 2. And it's not just to get those views, but like it really is like that's gonna actually help you. I mean, I think of also like Tracy in season 2. She
Definitely.
had watched a part of season 1 and she was the elder, but you can see there is a progression in Tracy's game in season 2. And she talks and references a lot about it in day 2. I had watched it. I realized that people were more cutthroat. I realized that this, that, and the other. I knew that this was coming up at the end. Like, you know, so like it helps. It helps. So let's hope she at least watched a couple episodes.
I'm also really excited by the fact that she said that she is high energy and very competitive. And I'm interested in seeing what that looks like for like a slide puzzle or for like putting holding quarters up or whatever the competitions will be this season. But I could see her really kind of getting into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to our final contestant, someone who I do know you were very excited to talk about. We have David. David is 26 years old. He's a freelance web designer. He has been watching both season 1 and season 2.
Yeah.
He originally actually applied for season 2. And we really wanted to cast him. I don't remember the reason we didn't cast him. But then we cast him as an alternate. We didn't have anyone drop out, so we couldn't put him in actual season 2. But the very interesting thing is something that you might be privy to, because I think it's something we very briefly discussed in the actual interview, is that like his season 1 interview was still really good, but it's a lot more cold and calculating and logical.
Yeah, like what was the deal with the whiteboard? He had to
yeah. So in his season 1 interview, he had this big whiteboard behind him. And at this point, I don't even remember what was on it. But like it very well almost looked like either A, he was actually taking notes on that whiteboard because he was trying to like break down the game, not all too dissimilar from what you did, or he wrote that down to make himself more like than he really was. And I don't know what it is, but once again, his season 1 or his season 2 interview came off a lot more cold, a lot more calculating. So what I really love about this interview for season 3 and why we finally now have him on the cast is that there is an evolution in not only what we could potentially see as a player, but he even, I believe, says himself as a person has grown. And he talks about the stuff that he's been doing in the past year, which could immensely help him out. And if he really can put all these things to practice, I think I could see him being there in the final 5, hell, maybe even winning it all. It's hard to tell. There's 15 people, but, you know.
He is fascinating to me. And all of this, that was so clarifying because he starts off his interview talking about, first off, I love when you ask him kind of like, oh, tell me about yourself. He goes into an anecdote about how he had a conversation in Cabo with a girl that he knew for a week. And after a week asked what kind of vibes he gave off. And she said, you'd make a really great dad someday. Which I made my heart swell. And he talks about his golden retriever optimism. And it's so funny because like as the interview progresses, like he is such a warm and sweet personality. At least that's like what I got from it. And then as he starts talking about his gameplay, I feel like it goes a bit more game body. And I think he even like kind of talked about how he's not a game bot, but like it is kind of funny that like I think that he's deeply passionate about games. Like he talks about how he is a huge fan of social strategy games, and how he's been, to your point, playing chess a lot for the past year. So he's really high into pattern recognition, or he's been going to a physical trainer. So he's been working on himself for a year. So he's building his strength. Like, I think that he is very much kind of like, I can see just from this interview alone that he, over the course of a year, has evolved considerably I mean, he's running his own web developer business, like, I mean, it's fascinating to see, but I don't know about you, but like he kind of almost reminds me of Kyle in some ways from season 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got. I don't know, where he kind of goes in and out of this kind of like very game logical perspective, but he's also just kind of like sweet and humorous. Like at one point he was talking about a answer that Ben, I guess, gave during a temple ceremony once that I don't even remember, but I guess it was in regards to a question around big players. And he said that he would have responded differently. He said that he would have said, heck yeah, there are big players, and I'm one of them. I'll probably go down as the greatest Prometheus player of all time. But then immediately followed up like, oh, but I would say it sarcastically, and maybe it would go well, maybe it wouldn't. But I find him so enjoyable, just like even watching his interview alone. He's just so interesting.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. It's like I feel like, once again, I feel like if he's putting all these things to practice, you know, he really could make it far. But there is a thing especially among like super fans of these sort of games. You know, you see it in Survivor a lot. I'm sure you probably see it in Big Brother, where
You
like
see it in Prometheus.
you see it. Yeah, yeah. And the thing is like you have these people who come into it. Well, actually, I wouldn't even put you in this exact category that I'm talking about right here, but they like they know what they need to do, but they're not either. They're either A, they get too carried away in the game itself and end up like overplaying, you know, too fast, you know, too fast, or they're not naturally able to socially deliver the way they need to. And that even goes with the tempo question. You could say that, and if you're the right person who delivers it correctly, everyone's like, oh, David, like, we love you, like you're awesome. Or it comes off as like, oh god, David is such like he's so egotistical, like get him the fuck out, you know. Like it could go either way. So you know, it's interesting though. I'm curious to see how he's going to be able to play, because I only know him through face to face in these interviews, you know. So
yeah. Well, he is a self-described chaos gremlin as well, which I thought was a really funny way to put it, where I think he talks about how he kind of puts himself into these positions that he has to work himself out of, rightfully or wrongfully. All that being said, I believe does not have org experience, right?
No.
Yeah. His experience, it seems like, stems from watching all of the cool seasons of Survivor. He's going back and watching the slower seasons now. But then he also plays, as I said before, social strategy games. So it will be interesting, because I completely agree with you. I think that if he brings the mentality, especially if like kind of like that, like produced kind of Survivor kind of game mentality to something like a quick like weekend mini, I could see his character or his visibility kind of like blowing up. But I get really excited about kind of how he even thinks about things like where was it? Like honesty, like when you ask like would you rather lie or be honest, and he said, you know, first off he said, this might surprise you, honesty is important, but he knows that there is a need to develop trust, and that trust needs to be developed beyond game talk, and so he talks a lot about how he would like to kind of build again connections with people. He talks about at one point that he wants to build a battalion of like-minded individuals. Like,
that I don't remember.
He said, he said, find the numbers, find commonalities, form a little military battalion to run the game. But then he also said he wants to bring hilarity, and that he wants to bring that overconfidence. I'm hoping in his confessionals, but he did not clarify, but not worried to be too bombastic. I think either way, he's going to be such a fun character to watch. And like to your point, I think that he has very much the ability and the knowledge to go to that end. I'm excited to see him play.
Me too. One other thing too, because you just said something that made me look it up. So like when I'm looking at his prior experiences of like LRGs, ORGs, obviously they're non-existent, but he says that none of them have really stood out as being worth my time to even try and join. He enjoys this format, which is why it is his second time applying. And that in his season 1 application, if I remember correctly, he also did say that, I think before like the actual sequester blew up into flames, I think he was, and I could be wrong, I think he had said he was actually in some sort of circulation to potentially play.
Fascinating. I could totally see that.
So, which also like, yeah, I think is just a whole other, I think it kind of speaks to him as well, of like, he watched Sequester, and that is potentially something he's interested in, which I don't really know much about Sequester. I just know that it's fucking chaotic.
I mean, chaos as a rule set.
So yeah, I mean, I think that in its own kind of speaks to him. And then he also says about LRGs that like he's looked into them once again. Nothing that really stands out as being worth his time, but even more specifically, spending all that money to play a game. Because like that's the thing. Like if you're playing an LRG, yeah. Usually few $100 fee to play, then you got to buy a plane ticket. You're spending a shit ton of money, to play.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right, yeah. Do you have any final thoughts before we conclude this podcast?
Just to say that I am so excited just from the small pool of applicants I saw. I mean, so much variety and so much passion and energy. I cannot wait for the new season. The logo is beautiful. I'm really excited to see the Elder Twist is back. I think it is a incredible addition to the format that I think helps people get on their feet and mixes the game up, quite honestly, in a way that I think is really valuable. So I can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Bloody, for coming on. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And on that note, we'll see you for the next podcast. Bye.
Bye.